Hello guys and welcome again to this exciting video tutorial. I'm Peter Collins from Plugstuck and it's nice to have you here. So this is the third video in the series of how to make a login page with a login form which has form validation. Form validation, of course, I said it before and I'll say it again. Form validation is a way for users to enter correct information in the form fields. So the form validation helps you to enter the right email address, ensures you enter a correct email address. It ensures you enter a password that meets all the criteria that the owners of the web application set as a minimum criteria for a strong password. So without much ado, we are going straight into the code. We have done the HTML aspects, we have done the CSS aspect, and right here we are in the JavaScript. So we are going to start by going live. We launch our live server down here and it opens the tab in our browser. Launch our project on a separate tab. So this is how it's going to look when we are done, and this is where we are now. So let's compare the finished product with our current progress. As you can see, all of this works, but here when we do this, nothing, nothing, and nothing. So we need to do form validation for our email fields, form validation for our password field, and we are going to hide one of these to toggle the visibility of our password. So let's go, let's go, let's go. In here, this is our JavaScript. We have written a line of code, and what this does, it helps us with our email input element. Remember, we have our email input in the HTML. This JavaScript code helps us to extract that HTML email input and to be able to use it in our JavaScript. So this is a variable declaration. We declare a constant, give it a name, and we give it a reference. This is document.getElements.id email input, and it gives us access to this element, this email input element right here. So let's proceed. Now we have our email input element. We want to add what is called an event listener to our element. So we could do this. This is a comment, so it doesn't affect our code in any way. An event listener, input dot add event listener. We choose what type of event we want our event listener to listen to. As you can see here, there are a lot of events we can listen on. There's the click event, close event, composition and copy, lots and lots of events. All right, so but we want to listen to the input event. So whenever we make an input in our input element, we want it to run a function, and this function is called a callback function. So whenever we make an input in this input element here, it runs this function. So let's test it. Let's say we want it to alert us, say here. Okay, so go back here and see if it works. So we have just attached an event listener to our email input element. Next off, we want to write a function that runs each time we make an entry. So we clear this. We have to define a function, and we'll call that the handler function. So it's the function that handles the input event. We make a comment here and call it handler function. we can say, let's say, let's call it update email, right? Because each time we make an entry, we want it to update the email. So we say const update email will be to use an event object. We'll go into that when we, for those of you who are interested in JavaScript, we are going to be explaining this in very fine detail. So this is just a precursor to our JavaScript course. And if you are interested in getting to know about web programming, then this course is for you. Email will be int.get value. And there's a lot going on here. You definitely and obviously will not understand. But I want you to just follow and see the process of creating this email validation algorithm that I'm about to do, and see how it works in real life. Okay, so watch me as I work. And if you have if you have any questions, you can ask your questions in the group or in the comment section on this video. Element by ID. We are going to get the email output element. Remember, we gave it an ID here. Okay, so just do that. Message. This is a variable to contain our error message. We also have some other checks. A variable, we are going to define variables to implement checks on the data that we are going to be collecting from the user to make sure that the data is valid. Okay, so one of the checks is this: valid email, to test the validity of their email, white space. In our previous video, I defined the rules of email validation, and we said we don't want our email to contain white space. We don't want it to contain special characters except some that we listed out. We also want it to follow a certain format. And in this video, we are going to do the implementation of all those rules. So just follow me as I code. White space, zero white space. We are going to write a function that does the email validation solely. This is the crux of the matter. This is the heart of our email validation algorithm. So follow me. Here we are going to use a kind of function called ify, not ify, IIFE. For it stands for instantly initially instantiated function expression. So it's a function and it's an expression at the same time. For those of us who are interested in JavaScript, we are going to explain all of these in details. This is just to give you a precursor, an intro into what we are going to do and how we are going to do it. So watch and learn. Email and output. email string. So what we want to do is we want our email here, which is going to be collected from this by this function. We want to split it into smaller letters. We want to split it into its letters and use it like that. Email dot split. This is an inbuilt JavaScript function, so it comes in by default. We will explain that later. Email string. So we have defined email string here. For the rest of this function, we are going to be looping through our email string, which is now an array. An array is a data type of identical elements, containing identical elements, and it's iterable, which means we can go over each element in the array and perform a function. Um, index array. The first rule we want to implement, we want all the letters of our email to be in lowercase. Lowercase. Right? So here's what we do. If then to uppercase, not equal to n to lower case, then it means our item is an alphabet and we want our item to always be in lowercase. So we do this. Item will be item equal to item dot to lowercase. Right. So next on the list we want to scan for multiple at signs. We want to scan for um, okay, that's good. And at this point we also want to scan for our at sign. So we scan for multiple first, then we scan if our at sign actually exists. So scan for at sign. Because an email of course must have an at sign or whatever you call that sign there. Call it the at sign. Remember these in green, these are just comments, they don't affect the execution of our code. So you can as well do without them. But it helps give an idea of what the block of code does. And I'm using it for the purpose of this tutorial. Normally, I wouldn't bother putting all these comments because an experienced developer at a glance would understand what this code does. So this is solely for the purpose of um, uh, for this tutorial. So if you are writing your code, of course you can omit the comments. H correct format. Main.com. Move on. We're also going to scan for multiple full stops. So how do we do that? If again equal to this, then dot counter. Scan for multiple. Now we are scanning if it exists at all, because first of all we want to have at least one full stop in our email. We don't want to have more than one, and so this block of code helps us to ensure that we have just one, not more than one. While this block of code here, I'm going to write now to ensure we have at least one dot counter. Dot counter is equal to 0. It means there's no dot in our email, and all emails must have a dot, either a .com, .net, dot whatever. But your email must be in this format. Your email at domain.com, right? So you see dot counter error message. Same incorrect format. Just copy again. And that's not all. What next? We are going to scan for to limit our characters, our email to a minimum of 8 characters. We want our email to have at least 8 characters, and we also want it to not have more than 30 characters. So that would be one for 8 characters, right? Limit, limit email. I don't think I've seen an email that's shorter than 8 characters. If you see one, please you can notify me. Message. Let's use array. Let's not use index. Let's use array. If array dot length is a better option. Less than 8. This is the array here we are using as a reference. So if the length of the array, the length of our input array is less than 8, then it should pop an error message to the user saying, hey, your email seems like it's too short. Are you sure this is a real email? Yes. So email must be at least so sorry. Okay, good. We are making progress. We make it 7. Mm, let me get me. Let's make it. Leave it at. Leave it at 8. Just leave it at 8. 8 is good. So as a programmer, you have to make certain decisions on the fly. You need to be able to think fast and just decide immediately so you don't waste your time deliberating on to do or not to do. Next, so if array.length is greater than or equal to 30, that's what that conditional statement says. And we say error message. We are good to go on that one. Now, next off, we want to do some hardcore programming here now. We want to be sure that our email does not begin with a special character. Okay, because emails are not supposed to begin with a special character like at or and or any of those special characters. So how do we achieve that? Let's write the comment first. Email and if index is equal to 0 and its function equal to lowercase function means if this is the first element we are executing this function on and our item we are observing, if we if we put it in uppercase, it gives us the same thing as when we put it in lowercase. For special characters, the test for special characters is actually testing them with the uppercase and lowercase functions. A special character would typically give you the same results in uppercase as in lowercase. But for alphabets, you will get different results when it's in uppercase and when it's in lowercase. So that's the test. Now, the tricky part is this. When we test for special characters, also we are also bound to get numbers in this category because numbers in uppercase are still the same as in lowercase. So if we test with uppercase and lowercase functions alone, we will be able to filter out special characters, but we will also be able to filter out numbers. Now, everyone here knows that an email can very well begin with a number. So we don't want to filter out emails that begin with numbers. We want to only filter out the ones that begin with special characters. So what do we do here now? We are going to say let is number, right? And we say for loop. This is a for loop. If you want to know about for loops, just go to W3 schools on Google, search W3 schools, and go to the JavaScript course there and search for loops. You get a good explanation of what a for loop is, but we are also going to talk about it in our JavaScript course. So if you want some more insight into what a for loop is and how you can use it, this will help you. Our JavaScript course, you should definitely sign up. Mm, right. So we are testing from 1 to 10. And if our number, or if our character here, item, right? If item is a number, this function, this for loop here, will detect it and it will tell us, oh, it's a number. So you can let it pass. But if it's not a number, then if it is not a number, here's what happens to it. Error message. Email cannot begin with a special character. Email cannot begin with a special character. I'll just grab it from here. Okay, good. Now, we also want to implement another rule here, which is, now what's the essence of implementing all these stringent checks to begin with? Sometimes people try to hack websites, and the best way to hack a website is by entering malicious code into their input elements. And when they do that, sometimes it's called SQL injection. Sometimes they use injection attacks to be able to get information, unauthorized access to your database. So this form validation helps to check and ensure that the users are not entering malicious code into your input elements, which is sent to your server. Because if malicious code manages to get to your server, attackers find a way to execute that code on your server and get information from your database. You do not want that to happen, especially if you are running an enterprise level software where you have a lot of users and you collect a lot of sensitive information from them. So this is one of those checks. It's like the previous one, but with some more extra. Now, hang on tight. You may not understand this, but I will be explaining about this in the group. There you go. Still check. Then we are going to filter out numbers. I don't know what the Air Force is doing around here, but these their choppers are very noisy. Please bear with me. I hope you can still hear me. Oh, close. Mm, that's gonna be high. Then it's a number. Right. If it is not a number, then we execute this. And so you can decide to use any alphabet in your for loop. This is just I. It represents anything. We can use J, we can use K, we can use anything in the world. But I prefer to use I because it's just short, simple and short. Left minus one. Okay, there you go. So if we pass the last item in the array and it gives us a number, right? And then we pass the last two elements in the array to check if it also gives us a number or a special character. So now this is very weird. I don't know if this chopper pilot is deliberately flying too close to my house because I don't understand why he's just disturbing my video. This never happens on a normal day. Right. So if it is not a number, no message. Incorrect format. Enter your email at domain.com. Incorrect format. Okay. Now this is very creepy because these choppers keep flying close to my house and disturbing my video. This is very extremely creepy. I don't get why this is happening, but I hope we are safe here. They better not be fighting a war out there or drop a bomb. Limit. Count the number of white spaces. Let's count the number of white spaces. Remember, in one of the criteria, we said our email is not to contain white spaces. So we want to make sure our email does not contain white spaces. How do we do that? If, if item is equal to white space, then we say white space, sorry, white space plus equal to. Then we go further to say, give a warning if white space is contained. So we say if white space 0, error message. Not another chopper, please. I don't want another chopper flying close to this house. Spaces. Comprises. So if what if there's no error detected? What if all these criteria are passed? Then we want it to revert to the original hint if there's no error detected. So how do we achieve that? Revert, right? So, so it should be we defined the variable name here. This is what we use. So it's important that we use the same pattern of capitalizing at each point. This is very important in JavaScript. JavaScript is case sensitive. So let's go back there. You see we made some error here. Change it and we changed it in this one too. So we can go on. Enter. Enter. Should have one dot counter, one at, and index less than 30. Right. If we have all these criteria passed, then error message should revert. Dot mail. So before we move on, we need to link it to the page in some way, make sure that our page can display these alerts and these error messages and give the user feedback as they type. So we say valid email, and finally use a ternary operator here. You know what? Let's use an if else statement first. If valid email, I want to show us um, how we can interchangeably use if else statements or ternary operators in JavaScript. So let's go. If valid email is not equal to email entered, means user has entered an incorrect email, and when we say email input, valid email. So it has the correct information instead of the wrong one. And then we come down here and say error output element. Error message. But before we execute, we have to pass values to this if. Remember, we talked about this instantly initiated function expression here, and we have a way of passing values to the expression. So here, what do we do? So email outputs. So we just come with the error output here. What's wrong with my mouse? Mm, okay, so in a minute we are going to be checking out our page and see how this thing works. In about just a minute. Okay, so now we are going back to our web page. Refresh. You see, refresh. Now I always advise developers to use the developer tools over here by the right in the console. It's just here, and it shows you errors when you code. It shows you errors in your code, so you can debug on the fly. You can log to the console here and see exactly what's wrong if you have an error. you find where the error is and you'll be able to trace it and fix it. Okay, I think we have a little error here and I'm quickly going to debug that. So just hold on. Okay, so with that done, we try to type something, we see that our email validation is still not responding. What do we do now? We go back to the code and we remember we defined a handler functions called update email. Take our handler function and pass it to the event listener. Here, when we say update email, we want to pass the event object to the update email function, which runs on the values extracted from the object. And then we can go back and try it again. Try it one more time. And right now, email at see, spaces are not allowed in email. The error reporting is accurate, incorrect format. Enter your email at domain.com. Okay, domain dot and perfect. So let's try one more. Let's start with a special character. Let's say this email cannot begin with a special character. So you see all the error messages that we defined in um, our JavaScript document are right here. So this is a correct format for email. And here, right here, I'm just going to put my email in case you want to message me privately. You have a question to ask. Here is my email. All right. So in our next video, we are going to do the password validation algorithm. I will see you there.